have to keep going. There was nobody that had more excuses than me when I first started. And I started working with college students, and I started working, really helping them graduate and get into the career that they wanted to get into. And I can tell you this, I was in a place where I would give myself an excuse like, oh, you know what, I'm too tired, it's after work, or I didn't, at the time I didn't have any kids, but it was like, I want to just relax, so I got to clean up, or I got to do this thing, with my wife, which at the time was just, she was still my girl at the time. I wasn't even engaged at that point. So I got to do this with my girl. Like, I have to do that. I have to do this. And I would give myself so many different excuses for why I couldn't, why I wasn't getting ahead. Why I was giving and these were like great excuses. And what I realized was, although I had amazing excuses, like if I told this to a third party, or if I told this to a friend, or if I told this to somebody, they would be like, okay, no, that's legit. Like, no, I mean, I completely get it. If you ain't got the money, what can you do, right? You don't have the money. You throw your hands up. You can't do nothing, right? If you don't got the time, I understand you're busy. You're in all of these nonprofits, and you're doing this, and, you're participating in that, and I get it. If you don't got the time, what can you do? Right? Oh man, you don't understand how to do this thing. Hey, listen, I feel you. Like, if you don't understand how to do it, then, it is what it is, right? Like, if you don't know how to do it, then, what can you do? And I would be given so many excuses, and then I had people around me that validated those excuses. So because that was the case, I was in a perpetual cycle of staying in the same place. And at that point, that was just broke. I just had the will and the passion to want to do it, but I stayed broken, confused for a long time. I mean, I probably stayed like that for at least a year and a half to almost 2 years, where I was like, yo, I gotta get from this, because if I kept staying in the same place, I would have just quit. Honestly, it would have been like insane for me to think I'm gonna keep trying to go and do things that's not working. So I got to a place where literally I almost quit, and it wasn't until I decided to say, you know what, let me stop giving these excuses. And I said, let me at least try to invest, because I was the Google king, I was the YouTube king, I was the podcast king. And I would try to give myself, all of the reasons why I should try to do everything free. But I realized that I kept hitting a certain ceiling. And I'm like, man, I need to figure out things that actually work for me. So literally, I went on a journey to really try to figure out, okay, well, what do I need to do to make this thing work? And I started learning. I started reading books. I started investing more in programs. And then and this was the key, I started investing in coaching. And when I started investing in coaching and mentors, I started seeing behind the scenes things that people were doing that not even just business related, but it was related to things in terms of mindset. And I really started looking and seeing like, oh wow, every time they hit an obstacle, they don't stop. That's interesting. When they hit an obstacle, it's keep going. When they hit an obstacle, it's figure it out. When they hit an obstacle, it's let me find other people to rope in and bring in to help me on this. When they hit an obstacle, there's other things that they do to help them to overcome the hump in that situation. So I'm like, okay, so let me start tapping into that. And I realized that as time went on, and I started hanging around more successful people, and I started seeing how they were resilient in certain situations, that made me realize that, okay, the things that I used to have trouble with, or the areas that I used to have problems with, those are no longer problems. Like, because I can overcome those. Just like when we were younger, and we had a problem tying our shoes. Well, hopefully tying your shoes is not it's not a problem right now, right? Because you've learned how to like, I love what business sales said, because you learn how to keep going. You learn how to be resilient. You feel me? So with that got me into a place to where now when I give those excuses, I stop myself immediately and say, hold up, wait. Because we're not all, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I still go through some of the same, I try to give myself some of the same excuses in my head. But now I think of solutions now, and I don't look at it as a problem. I don't look at it as a wall. You feel what I'm saying? I don't look at it as a wall like, oh man, I came up into this wall, let me go back. You know how crazy that is? That's like coming to a red light and stopping. Or that's like you ever been driving and you ever see the construction, like you ever run into like a construction zone where they want you to where you can't go through. That's like every time you driving and you run into a speed bump or you run into a construction zone, you turn back and go home. If you was in a car with somebody and they did that, you'd be looking at them like you crazy. Like, yo, where you going? Yo, we got somewhere to go. You feel what I'm saying? Like, if you had somewhere to go, you wouldn't, it would be crazy to you that somebody was driving and because they saw a construction zone, they would turn back. You'd be like, yo, listen, my man, follow the sign. The sign is telling you to go that way. The sign is telling you to go around. The sign is telling you to go this way. The sign is telling you to go through the tunnel. The sign is telling you to go over the bridge. Feel what I'm saying? There's a lot of signs that's telling you to go different places and it's telling you to go around it, but at the end of the day, you're not letting this barrier stop you.